Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we are speaking with 29-year-old athlete who has been competing since 2015, joined the NPC in 2016, and she earned her pro card at her third national show. And she's a coach for Team Fflex while also working as a full-time registered nurse in a critical care unit. Welcome to the show, Bryanna Barcelo. How are you doing?
Hi, Celeste. Thank you for the introduction. I am doing well. How are you today?
Of course, I'm doing good too. I'm so excited to have you on and talk to you. And I know you listen, so I got to ask if there's anything you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage.
Yeah, so I knew this question was coming because I listened to all of your episodes, and yet I don't have a super solid answer, but I've been thinking of this. And I've been thinking of this, and the reason I don't have like a really solid answer is because this has changed as I've competed more. So now, right before my heel hits the stage, I just take a moment to just feel grateful to be there, to feel like to just feel present in the moment and to realize how much of a blessing it is to be there and how exciting it is to be there. So I just take like this little moment to just kind of like let it all, like soak it all in. And it just makes me feel so much gratitude. So I think it's kind of hard to feel nervous when you're really grateful. So it makes me go on stage feeling super confident and just like happy to be there. But when I first started competing, I don't think I did anything before I went on stage. I just got super nervous, to be honest. So I feel like this mindset of mine has changed a lot as I started competing. And this is something fairly new that I do now, especially as a pro.
That's awesome. Oh, for sure. And now you've had this journey for the last couple of years. You really joined, like I said before, the NPC in 2016. So what inspired you to join the NPC, and when did you know you wanted to become a pro?
So when I have the most basic story too, like, in 2015, somebody approached me at the gym and I feel like a lot of us started that way, right? We're at the gym and somebody asked me about, oh, have you heard about bodybuilding? You should try it. There was a show coming up in like 3 weeks or something. I think like that first prep was no more than 4 weeks.
Wow.
And I thought, yeah, I know. But so my first show was actually an OCB show. Are you familiar with OCB?
Yes.
It's just another federation. So I'm from a little background. I'm from Tucson. It's a super small town. And I think at the time OCB was like popular here or something. This was 2015. So there was a super small show. Somebody approached me at the gym. They're like, you should just try it. I ordered a suit off of some Etsy website and just kind of winged it. I just thought I knew what I was doing and tried to diet for a couple of weeks, got on stage. And when I saw everybody around me and what it was really all about once show day came, that's when I felt intrigued and more interested in it. And then I learned about, after that show, I realized, oh, there's other federations, like OCB is not the only thing. And then I learned about NPC and I started following people like Amanda Latona and like the original, like, I don't know, like that generation of bikini. And that's what kind of got me started. And so in 2016, I started competing in the NPC and I just fell in love with it. I just started setting goals for myself. Like I want to win a regional show. Now I want to go to nationals. I want to earn my pro card. And I just got deeper and deeper into it. And I fell in love the more with it, the more I did it.
That's so awesome. And what was your experience like in the NPC compared to the OCB?
The OCB was just really small. I mean, I only did one OCB show and it was just really small. I think there was like 9 girls in my class. And I think the quality of the athlete, even back then, like, I mean, it required a 3-week prep versus I think for NPC, everybody would probably do like a 12-week prep. So I just think in general, like the NPC just brings a higher level, like, of competition, and like athletes are just at another level in the NPC. So to me, it felt I've always been some type of athlete or like competitor growing up. So I felt like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it against like the best of the best. And like the NPC just kind of felt like the best of the best. So yeah,
Totally.
that's when I started doing the NPC shows.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah.
No, I don't even know if there's still a whole lot of OCB shows, to be honest. I don't even know if that's still around. I'm not really. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how popular it is, but I know they're definitely still around.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, now you're an IFBB pro and you've competed as an IFBB pro, which is awesome. So how did your experience competing as a pro compared to, and you did some pretty competitive shows, by the way, I thought anyways, the Patriots Challenge and then the Battle in the Desert, both of them had some girls who ended up going to the Olympia, or who are going to the Olympia, I should say. But what was your experience like at the pro level compared to the amateur level?
Oh gosh, I can take this so many different ways, but you know, the biggest difference for me from competing in the like at an amateur level and the pro level is that for some reason it feels a lot less stressful and more enjoyable to compete as a pro than it did as an amateur. So I think when I was competing in the NPC as an amateur, it's almost like I felt like I did enjoy it and I did love it, but it was a little stressful. Like the chase for that pro card was a little stressful. There was only so many national shows you could do. There was only, like a timeline of when you could really compete. And it just felt like a little bit more stress and pressure. And I think now as a pro, like one of the biggest differences is there's a little less pressure. Like, yes, it's more competitive, but at the same time, you don't have a national circuit that you have to compete in just X amount of time. Like there's literally a show every weekend that you could do. And you're not like chasing after like that pro card or like that one and only thing. It's more about like bettering yourself every single show and like paying your dues, working your way to the top. It's a different type of feeling. So I think that's been like the biggest difference between competing in the amateur NPC and the IFBB Pro League. And this is funny because it actually takes me back to the first question you asked, like when my feet first hit the stage. I think that's why as an amateur, I would probably get so nervous. I felt like there was like almost like more on the line or like just more pressure versus now I'm just so grateful I made it here. And like, I feel like I get to enjoy all of it a little bit more. Wow. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It makes perfect sense. And actually, I really appreciate that perspective because I've had a lot of girls, and you've probably heard them come on and say that they wish that they had savored their time more in the NPC, but you're saying how grateful you are now to be in the IFBB.
Yeah. And, I think so a little, I can also agree with that because I did enjoy being part of the NPC, but I worked really hard. I mean, everybody works really hard for the pro card, but I paid my dues there already, right? Like I did a lot of local shows. I did 3 national shows, but it was over like 2015 and I didn't get my pro card till 2019. So I feel like I paid my dues there. Like I worked really hard there. So when I did get my pro card, it felt like, I felt like it was the right time. Like it was meant to be when it happened. And it was like I was ready for like the next step already, if that makes sense. So I did enjoy my time there. And I did, and I would always keep in mind, like, enjoy winning now in front of your family and friends, or enjoy placing now, because I always knew, like, when you make it to the pro league, it's going to be very different, and you're going to be losing a lot more than you're going to be winning. So I did enjoy the MPC, but I was also very ready to like be part of the pro league.
I love that. And you did have an interesting road to pro when it comes to national shows. And you competed at USA's, you got 6th. Then the next year you got 12th. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. And then the next year you got 1st. And that was in 2019, where you won your pro card. So did you ever feel discouraged along the way because you went from 6th to 12th? And then did you ever feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it?
Oh yeah. Like not all the time, but very often. So things have changed so much for me since then, but I look back, I was self-coached during this whole time. So from 2015 up until I turned pro, off being self-coached, which I don't recommend, but I did it all by myself. I mean, I had like a support system and things like that, but I was self-coached. So it did feel stressful, and stressful is not the right word. I did have a lot of moments of self-doubt, I think, because I was doing it by myself. So I think when you have a coach, you have like that reassurance, or somebody guiding you, or somebody telling you, and you almost get to relax a little bit more, because your only job is to execute your coach's plan and be an athlete, versus being self-coached. It's a lot easier to kind of like overanalyze things or have a little bit more self-doubt. So I remember going to USA's the first time. I forget what, I think it was 2017, the first time I did. Yeah, 2017. I was so excited to land in the first call out. I was like, I left there happy, genuinely happy. I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready. Like, I'm going to get it next year. And I had a few people around me that would tell me like, oh, jump into another national show, like whatever national show was after that. I think it was, I don't know. They were just like, encouraging me to get into a national show right away. At the time, Celeste, I couldn't compete in more than one national show because I couldn't afford to. Like, it was just such an expense for me. So I would take this really long like improvement season, even though that's not what I called it. I would just take time off and then come back the next year to USA's, because it was the closest show to me. It was like the most affordable one. And there was just something about that show that I always loved. Like, I feel like USA's always brought like top level, like amateur athletes. Like, it was always one of the biggest shows. It's in Vegas. Like, I loved everything about it. And I always told myself, I'm going to get my pro card at that show. And so after 2017, I took that year to, I don't know. I didn't even get judges' feedback. I just kind of winged it, to be honest. I didn't have any type of real guidance into what I was doing. I would just like follow girls online, like the pros online, and try to figure out what they were doing and how they were looking, and try to honestly just try to copy that. So I went back in 2018, and I don't know, I landed 12th or somewhere not in first or second call out, maybe second call out or something. But I was really defeated that after that show, I just felt like, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe this isn't meant for me. But I had this little moment right after I got off stage. I remember my boyfriend was with me, and he looked at me and said, is this something that you really want? And I told him, yeah. And he said, okay, then we're going to come back next year and you're going to win and you're going to be a pro. And I told him, I just remember so clearly telling, I was crying like outside of the hall in Vegas. And he just said, well, if this is something that you really want, then I have no doubt that you can do it. And he's like, you just have to work really hard every single day, not just a couple of days out of the year, like work really hard every single day towards this and you'll get it. And I came home. I didn't even want to go back to stay in the hotel. Like, I got my stuff and drove home that night, and I was like, I'm ready to work. And that year, I think, is when I like took it a lot more serious and really started doing more research and educating myself, and not just thinking it, kind of just more intent into every single day. And then I came back that next year. I didn't do a single show. I went from USA's 2018 I didn't do any more shows, and I waited until USA's the next year to step on stage again, and I won my class and turned pro.
Wow. I'm surprised there's so much here that I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I want to make a quick statement that I'm surprised you still had the national qualification. Like, how did that work?
It was a full year. So when I went to USA's 2018, the week before that, I had won an overall at a local show in Tucson.
Oh,
so it was like the perfect timing.
That's
I think
perfect.
my qualification, it was perfect. Yeah, I think my qualification would have like expired like right after USA's 2019 because
wow.
it was just a year. Yeah. So I had just won an overall in my local town. And then the weekend after that was USA's, where I finished like second or third call outs. I'm not somewhere, not in first call out. And then I took that whole year off, and right where that timeline was, like, I think my qualification would have probably ended like that week.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was perfect timing.
Very, very, it was meant to be. And I love how I love how your boyfriend was like, if this is what you want, I believe you can do it, and you just got to work. And he encouraged you, and you took that as motivation. So then you said that you went home and you were way more intent with each day, and you studied and you researched more. So what did you do differently in the season or the time from that show to then 2019? Like, what did you change?
Oh, pretty much everything. And that's not even an exaggeration. I, for starters, started educate. I mean, I am a nurse, so like I have a really good understanding and foundation of like the human body and anatomy and physiology and nutrition. But I took it to another level. Like I started researching, like, okay, I didn't even follow macros. Like I didn't even know what that was. I mean, I knew what macros were, but I didn't really understand how to go about it. I didn't even realize how much I was eating or any of that. So I started by like dialing in my nutrition. And wait, let me take a step back. I started by getting judges' feedback this time.
Mm-hmm.
And off of my judges' feedback, I said, okay, they're asking this and this and this. What do I need to do to get that? So I started researching, like, okay, they're asking for leaner legs. What do I need to do for leaner legs? Started doing my research and training that way. Then I started with the nutrition part. Okay, what do I need to do with my nutrition to really dial it in this year? So then I started doing a little bit more of a macro approach in an off season. And then I gave myself enough time. I would always make these super short preps. Like I would just diet down according to whatever I thought I needed to do for maybe like 8 weeks or maybe 10 weeks. And this time I said, I've done the research. Slow and steady approach is going to work a lot better for the goals that I have. So I gave myself like a 20-week prep. And I planned this 20-week prep like months in advance. Like I knew when I was going to start. I had an idea of like how much weight I wanted to lose per week, like that kind of thing. So I just got really strategic with all of it. Well, it's not even strategic now. Now it's just kind of like that's what everybody does. But at the time, I didn't have a coach. I didn't know this is what people were doing. I was just kind of figuring it out by myself.
Right. You had to be your own coach and yeah, strategize that way.
Yeah, exactly. So I just became more intent into every day. I started paying attention to what I was eating. I went from, I used to work night shift, and my night shift meals at work were candy, whatever was in the vending machines, whatever I picked up at like a Circle K on my way to work. And I went from that to like taking my meals and understanding that I felt better if I ate healthier food. So I took like a 360 approach, not only to get ready for the show, but like overall for my health, really. So yeah, I just dialed it in every way that year. It really, total 360 from what I was doing before.
Definitely sounds like it. And I mean, you had to learn a lot and trust the things that you were learning. And then you got to USA's again and you got what you wanted. What was the judges' feedback after you won your pro card?
So I talked to Sandy after I got my pro card, and she told me, don't change anything. She told me, get on a pro stage and just see where you line up next to other girls that are taller than you, especially because I'm really small. I'm 4'11". She was like, just get on a national stage and just see how you do standing next to other girls. Her specific feedback was, don't change anything. And it's almost like, in my mind, I felt like, well, I need to turn it up a notch if I'm going to go on a pro stage. So I didn't change everything, but I definitely started changing things, and it totally backfired.
Really?
But
what did you
yeah,
change?
so, this is one of my biggest downfalls, and one of the things that I'm working on now, actually. I thought that doing more was better. So I thought, oh, like I looked good at USA's, but that was just a 20-week prep. What if I did a longer prep? What if I added a little bit more cardio? What if I dieted a little bit harder, like trying to do more? And it just backfired. I ended up losing a lot of my muscle, a lot of like that full look. I think my body looked tired. Um, yeah, so that's the mentality that I had after that. I don't know if that makes sense. I just thought like, oh, like in my own mind, I thought I need to turn it up a notch. And that to me meant like go harder in all these areas. Instead, I should have just slowed down and just maintained like she told me to, and jumped into a show. So I went into my pro debut really quickly after I won my pro card, just to kind of see how it would go. I did the Wings of Strength in Arizona. So that was, I think, either like late August, early September, and I won my pro card in July. So during that time from July to September, I don't know, I just did more cardio, less food, just more, harder. Wanted to try to be better, but it just was the wrong approach for it. So I did my pro debut, and my mentality going into that show was like, well, I just want to see where I stand. I didn't have any expectations of myself. Really, I guess I did want to look better, but I didn't have any expectations as to like, oh, I'm going to go here and place or take a top spot or anything. No, I didn't think that way. But after that show, I got feedback again, and again from, I'm pretty sure it was Sandy again. She basically told me I needed to look fuller, like the look that I had just brought to USA's. So at that point was when I realized, okay, I'm not doing something right. And that's when I started looking into getting a coach.
Wow. How'd you decide on? No, it's awesome. It's such a cool journey that you've had. And I'm learning a lot just from the experiences that you had from going from self-coaching, and now you are a coach. But I want to hear more about how you got in touch with Ryan, and what you guys did differently once you started having a coach as a pro, and how that changed your perspective.
Yeah, so I did extensive research on a coach. I am someone that, well, it's kind of hard to go from being self-coached and doing everything for yourself, and then to then letting somebody take full control, especially for especially for me. I am like, my personality type, I'm a critical care nurse. I'm very like type A, I don't know if independent, just used to doing things for myself on my own. So it was very hard to kind of let go of that. And it was hard to, I guess for me, if I was going to have a coach, I really wanted somebody that was going to take my health as a top priority. So I started doing my research on different coaches and their methods on how they went about preps. And I got on calls with different coaches. I stalked at different coaches. I reached out to other girls that were being coached by other coaches. So long answer to say, I did my research. And after I got off a call with Ryan, I just knew like, okay, yeah, I want you to coach me because of his methods. He had everything that he talked about and stood for. It was everything that I aligned for and that I knew I needed in a coach. So that's how I picked my coach now, and seriously has been one of the absolute best decisions I have ever made. Not only for like my competition career, but I think for my overall health.
Yeah, I love that. I want to hear more about how you knew he was the right coach for you and how he's taken your health into account while working for you, and maybe if that made it easier to let go and give him trust.
Yeah. So his whole method of coaching is very much like longevity, sustainability, and health comes first. And he wants you to win, but we're going to do this the right way. So all his methods, whether it's training, nutrition, they all align with that. And what I guess I remember talking to him, and what really stood out with me for me with him is I remember talking to him and I told him, yeah, I want to compete. And I had like shows in mind. I remember telling him like, I want to do the XX and show. And he's like, well, from what you're telling me, from looking at your pictures, he's like, no, we're not going to be competing. Like, we need to take some time off. This is what we need to do. And he was very much like not afraid to tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. He wasn't like interested in just getting another client. He was like, nope, this is what we're going to do. This is what it's going to require. And I love that. I love that he was able to say, no, if you want longevity, if this is what you want to do, then you can compete. And I feel like up to that point, a lot of other coaches that I talked to were like, oh yeah, we can do that show. Yeah, you can be ready for that show. So I really liked that right away. And then, sorry, I almost forgot like the other part of your question because I talk so much, but you
No,
asked,
I love it.
but,
How you learned to let go with him.
Oh yeah. Oh, it was a process. And I think it took a while. It wasn't like instant, but what I really appreciate from him is that anything he asked of me to do, he would explain why, and he would explain it in detail and would constantly, and still does constantly, reassure me of this is what we're doing and this is why. And that allowed me to trust him more and more and more. And now is just the best feeling to know that I can just execute a plan and be a full athlete because I have a coach that I trust fully. Like that is the best feeling. And now as a coach myself, that's something I like my clients to feel from me, that they can trust me, but they can feel comfortable just executing a plan fully. But if they have questions, they can always ask and be sure, and they can know that I'm going to answer the questions.
Wow. Okay. I actually am curious if your inquisitive nature, like wanting to know why he was doing certain things, and you having been self-coached, I wonder, and I'm curious if that influenced him bringing you on as one of his coaches.
Oh, that's such a good question. I think maybe a little bit actually, now that I think about it that way. So before I started working with him, I was already kind of helping a lot of people on the side, doing a lot of more like lifestyle kind of teaching and coaching. So I remember talking to him about it, and then one thing led to another, and I told him, oh, I am a nurse. Like at the end of the day, what I like to do is help people, right? And I knew that with coaching, I could help a whole lot more people than I was helping in the hospital. And I could almost help them before they were sick, if that makes sense. And I loved that. Like, I love that I could be like helping somebody now, like online with their nutrition and their training so that they would never have to see me as their nurse. Like, I love that part of it. And I think Ryan knew that, from talking, and he also knew how interested I was in learning. Like, I do so much research on so many things. I have subscriptions to like scholarly articles. I'm a nerd. And I think he knew how much I like learning and taking on different little courses or asking questions. And he knew that I would not only, I think he knew that, I'm assuming he knew that I would love doing it, but also constantly want to learn. I think that makes a really good coach. So yeah, I think that that's probably one of the reasons why I got hired on as one of his coaches. And also, I think a part of that is my experience. I think that being self-coached for so long required me, or kind of forced me, especially like the last year, to really like do research, and not only like the book type of research, but like not only the science of bodybuilding, but also what actually works, because science can say one thing, but what does experience show you? What are the top level athletes actually doing? So I think the combination of my experience and then wanting to always learn the research and science behind everything is probably what got me to be a coach for this awesome team.
What do you think makes it awesome?
Bodybuilding?
Your team.
Oh my gosh. I think this is kind of the reason why I still compete, actually, this team. And I think what makes this team awesome is it's such a feeling of like a family. I know that sounds super cheesy, so I was trying to think of a different word, but it just feels like such a community. Like I found my people. Nice. I found people that think like me, people that get excited about the same things, people that I can talk about the same things. I've met so many people. It just makes my life better. It, like, the community and the people and the relationships that I have and the experiences that this team has brought to my life, it's kind of hard to match or explain or compare to anything else. I've made so many friends, and through either competing, through coaching, through traveling just to watch other shows, or being on podcasts like this, it's that sense of like community and family that I love about the entire sport. But then you like narrate even more into like our team, and then it feels like a little family, and I love that. And this team stands for everything that I believe in, you know, not only everything I believe in, that's in like in competing and reaching your goals, but making it fun and sustainable while you do it. So that's why this team is awesome. Shameless plug.
I asked, so it's all good. I'd rather you say that than, I don't know. It's not, I don't know. I'd be like, well, okay, changing subject. So I think that's really cool that, yeah, of course. I think it's great you feel that way. And I've always been curious how, because there are some teams with like coaches, there's teams with coaches under the coach, right, who started the team or whatever, and then they're coached by the head coach. So I've been curious how you separate, if at all, working as a coach for your coach and then being a client for him.
Oh, I love this question, because I actually messaged Ryan, okay, this is athlete Bree reporting, or then I'll message him, okay, now this is Coach Bree.
That's awesome.
Like I literally switch gears, but it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not. I really do separate. We separate both pretty well. So we have set times where we like do official check-ins as client and coach. And then we have, and of course, I can always reach out with anything in between that. But we also have set times as to where we can talk about more like business and clients and things like that. We also do like a lot of, if anything is business related, it goes through like our email. If it's more like, oh, we're checking in with each other, client and athlete, we'll just message each other or jump on a Zoom call, or less informal kind of approach. But what's really cool is that I'm being coached by him. I'm learning a ton, because up until this day, especially lately, I ask a lot of questions. Like anything he asks me to do, I want to know why he's having me do this. And I constantly learn from all the like approaches and techniques he's using on me. So being coached by him only allows me to further like my knowledge and my experience and skills as a coach myself. So like the things that he teaches me, that he has me do as an athlete, are things that I can then implement on my clients, which I love. And he actually makes a point to, for example, when he gives me a refeed, he's like, he'll explain to me why he gives me a refeed. And then he's like, see, this is something that you can also use with your clients with X, Y, and Z. So it works really well, actually. It's like I'm constantly getting training by being an athlete.
So maybe you have an answer to this, maybe you don't, but I'm curious as to the best thing, or maybe the most impactful thing that you ever learned from your coach, whether that was in your coaching, you know, for you to be a better coach, or just in your own athlete career, what's the best thing you've ever learned?
Shoot, this is a hard one, but the first thing that comes to my mind right now is because there's been so many learning lessons, especially the last year, really. But I think the first thing that came to my mind right now was that more isn't always better. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, especially as of recent. And that's something that's came up multiple times during my competing career. But I think recently is like when I really learned it the hard way. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned as an athlete, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And obviously that was an important one for you.
Yeah, it was, how we talked about right after earning my pro card, I kept thinking more is better. Well, I kind of did that again when I started my actual first rookie pro season this year, and it backfired again. So this time I really learned the hard way, I think. And I've been learning a lot off of the last couple of months and learning that more isn't always better. So that's been my biggest learning lesson the last couple of months. So taking a different approach and seeing how my body's responding now to doing a lot less has been eye-opening for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that lesson with us. And I want to talk to you more about your experience as a coach and maybe how your nursing career supports you in your coaching career and vice versa.
Yeah, I think that my nursing degree and my career as a nurse is really what led me to be a coach. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. I think that I have this desire in me. I went into nursing because, again, it sounds a little cliche, but I genuinely love to help people. Like, I love to take care of people. I love making people feel better. And also, I love the learning part of it, right? As a nurse, especially in the area that I work in critical care, we're always learning something new, and we're always learning about the human body. And it's just so fascinating to me. But I only get to do that 12 hours a day in a hospital setting where people are super sick. So being a coach, I feel like I can touch so many more lives. I can help so many more people, and having the foundation of nursing and knowing what I know about the human body and about disease process and normal functioning process like metabolism and hormones and things like that. All of that just makes me a better coach. It's kind of like I got a 5-year trainer degree, like my nursing degree is kind of, if that makes sense. So it just allows me to understand my clients a lot better in terms of like how their body is responding and what to expect. And yeah.
Amazing. I think that's really cool.
And I think it just allows me to, like, being a nurse. I don't know. I don't have the right words for it. I just feel like they intertwine in so many different ways. I can spot different things because I'm a nurse. When a client shows me a picture of what they're looking like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's sodium, or that's you're probably needing X, Y, and Z. Like, my eye is so trained to see different things because of being a nurse, that I think it helps in coaching in that sense. And then, yeah, just the fact that I love to help people, like just making my clients feel good, whether they're just a lifestyle client or somebody just starting or somebody very experienced. I love that I get to help them before they ever need to go to a hospital.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. And you also do posing coaching. So how did you learn to pose since you coached yourself, and how do you keep up with the changes as well as all the different routines that maybe the girls you coach have to do?
Yeah, same way that I learned everything else. I did so much research because I did all my own posing up until now, actually. I mean, now Ryan touches my routines and he fine-tunes everything for me, but I've done all my own coaching for posing for myself. So I've done extensive research and I keep up with it all the time. I watch what the top level athletes are doing over and over. Like if there's a pro show, if I didn't get to watch the live that day, I'll go find it and watch it the next day to see like, what are the girls bringing to the stage? What are the judges going for? What's trending now? What's not trending? So I just keep up with it by watching the shows over and over for both wellness and bikini. And I started doing my own posing by myself back in 2015, 2016. And how I said, I'm from a pretty small town. So I started to, at the time, there was no posing coaches here, like nobody. And online posing coaching was just not a thing. So I started doing my research back then and then started helping girls locally. And I would just do it for fun and for free, like at the gym and just show up. And I did that for years. I think up until even after I won my pro card, I was still kind of just helping girls at the gym. And I realized how much I actually knew. And I realized I was actually doing a pretty darn good job at it. Mm-hmm. So then, then I started working with Ryan and I started helping girls. And he's like, like this is going really well. And you have a lot of knowledge on it. And it just picked up from there. But posing is actually so much fun for me. I love it. Like the performer in me loves posing. It feels like making little dance routines every single time. And I just love keeping up with it because it keeps changing. Even if it's just a little bit, it's still evolving. So it's fun to have something to like keep evolving with and having fun with, like making a new little routine every single time is fun.
I love that. Yeah, I think posing is such a fun part of the sport. If we embrace it, at first I like personally was like, I'll never get this down. And now I'm like, I love it. I never want to stop.
Yeah, same as me. And I love that you can completely change your physique with just posing. Yes. You could, like, if I need to fine tune something last minute for one of my girls, or if we need to hide a little flaw or whatever it is, like we can do so much with posing. I say this all the time, but it really is a make or break. Like you can transform a physique in 5 seconds. So I love that about it. It feels like a little magic.
Yeah, it's really cool to see it too, like in action, like even just how a girl can pose on the right side and then the left side and she looks completely different.
Oh yeah. Or even if she twists a little bit much or not, it's a completely different shape. It's pretty cool to see.
What are some of the things you see girls struggle with when they're posing or learning to pose for the first time that you think maybe you could share with us to be aware of for those girls?
Ooh, this is a hard one, but I think what comes to mind right away is being two things. One is being too stiff, like too robotic. I think that one of my tips from our girls is always just, put some music on, try to relax, yes, you want to stay tight, but you don't want to look robotic. That's one of my biggest tips, because if you're too robotic, you're not going to have like that graceful touch on stage. You're not going to have that stage presence. You're not going to stand out as much. And another thing is, I don't copy anybody else's routine. I think a lot of girls will see what somebody else is doing and want to copy it exactly. And that is such a big no-no, because routines look so different on different body types. Even like the same pose will look totally different on different girls. So when I have a girl that just copied a routine from somewhere else, like I just, if I could give any advice, it'd be, don't do that. Just do what works for your specific body type, because what somebody else is doing is probably or could possibly just not work for you. So those are 2 things.
Amazing. Great advice. You have obviously been working as a nurse for a while. You've been now competing for a while. You have a lot of experience in both these areas. I do want to talk about both of these things with you. I kind of want to go back to your competing a little bit, and then I'll talk to you about nursing, because something that you brought up earlier was how you needed to see how you stacked up against the girls when you competed as a pro. And part of that was also because you were shorter. You want to see how you did against girls of different heights. Did you feel like you had to do anything differently because you're shorter in the pro league compared to others?
I don't think I did this, but I think what I know that I have to do and what I'm working on now is I think that since I'm so much smaller, I am 4'11" and I am 90 pounds at most. So I think that for my frame, I really have to build a lot more muscle. So I know that the bikini division and criteria doesn't ask for a lot of muscle, but I think because of my frame and size, I actually have to build a lot more muscle. And I've actually seen this with girls around my height. They have to build a little bit more muscle than somebody that's taller just to look a little bit bigger on stage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think in order to stand next to somebody that's a lot taller than me and look the part, I have to grow a lot more than somebody that's taller. So that's going to be, yeah. And I think I've been watching a lot of shows, and when I see girls that are roughly around my height, I do notice that they have, for their frame, a lot more muscle than somebody else would have that's a little bit taller.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you look at the super tall girls, they're doing the same thing. Like they've got to put on more muscle so they don't look too long and lean compared to someone like you or someone who's maybe 5'4" or 5'6".
Exactly. Yeah, that is a good example. I feel like the girls that are kind of right in the middle with their height are so blessed, because the really tall ones, the really short ones, we have to work a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I think it's just a game of averages, right? Like there's been some shows where there's a lot of short girls or there's a lot of tall girls. And then you're being compared to people of your height more than you are people of maybe much different heights. So it's really interesting, just the division in itself. When you get to that pro level, not having different height classes, you really got to stand out. It's about not just your individual routine, but how you look in those comparisons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's all about who shows up and who's standing next to you, because, if all the girls next to me are like 5', 5'1", great. But then I have somebody that's like 6 foot standing next to my 4'11" self, that looks totally different. And it makes, I think, comparisons a lot trickier too.
Yeah, I feel like from a judging perspective, that would be so, they're looking at your shoulders and someone else's glutes. It's not
Yeah,
that extreme,
true.
but you know what I
No,
mean.
but that's what it feels like. Trust me. That's what
Yes.
it feels like.
Well, the other thing too is genetics and metabolism, and all these things come into play in this sport. So you've posted about how your body can handle a lot of food and always has been this way. So how do you manage your growing seasons and increasing calories from a show, knowing that you can handle a lot of food?
Yeah, my body can definitely handle a lot of food. So the first thing is I remind myself of this so that I don't feel afraid to eat this much, because it's a little bit of a mind game when you go from dieting down to then increasing food. It's almost like it's just the opposite of what you've been doing. So my first things I always tell myself, your body can handle the food, eat the food, it's good for you. So now my calories are really, really high for somebody my size. On a daily basis, they're really high, but then I'm also doing 2 really, really high calorie, what I call refeed days. And in order to, on these 2 days, so this is my strategic game plan right now, my coaches and I, 5 days a week, I hit my calories eating really whole nutritious foods, like an 80-20 balance at this point, but I really like healthy food. So I stick to like 90% healthy foods 5 days of the week to hit I think I'm on like 2,500 calories a day, which is a lot for me. And then 2 days out of the week, I hit really high numbers, usually anywhere from like 7,000 to 8,000 calories. But in order to hit those numbers, I really have to eat foods that are not as healthy. Like there's only so many calories I can eat off of chicken.
Oh my
vegetables,
gosh, that's not gonna happen.
So
you would be so full. Oh my
I would
God.
feel so uncomfortable. So in order for me to just really hit the calories that I need to hit, I start eating fun foods. So I just kind of get calories off of things that I'm either craving or just are higher